We're going to answer 5 key questions. First, what exactly is it? Second, why does it even matter? Then, how do you actually implement it? What are the 4 main principles that really make it work? And finally, how do you know if you're even being effective? Okay, first things first. Before we go any further, let's get on the same page and define what we're actually talking about when we say stakeholder outreach.
Yeah, it's a term you hear thrown around a lot, right? But what does it really mean when we're talking about process safety?
At its core, it's all about being proactive and building relationships. It's not about waiting for something to go wrong and then reacting. It's about actively seeking out everyone who has a stake in your operations, from community groups to local government, and starting a real, honest conversation about safety.
And this diagram here really puts it into perspective. Just look at where it sits. Stakeholder outreach isn't some nice-to-have extra or an afterthought. It is a foundational pillar, right there under commit to process safety. What that means is a truly strong safety management system is literally built on this idea. Okay, so we've got the what. Now for the big question. Why bother? Why should a company invest serious time and resources into doing this?
This quote from the source material just hits the nail on the head. It's not some fringe activity. It's one of the most important ingredients for success. Because when you think about it, a facility manager can't achieve their goals in a vacuum. They absolutely depend on genuine engagement.
And the payoffs? They're huge. Good outreach builds the trust that supports your license to operate. Without that trust, projects can get stalled, permits can be denied, things can grind to a halt. When the public and regulators actually have confidence in your safety systems, everything runs smoother. And hey, it's a two-way street. It also helps you spot potential issues before they blow up.
All right, let's shift gears from the why to the how. How do you actually put a solid stakeholder outreach program into motion?
I really like how this image visualizes the whole process. Think of stakeholder management like a big protective umbrella. Underneath it, you've got 4 key things going on: identification, analysis, communication, and engagement. And it all kicks off with simply knowing who you need to be talking to.
And here's the playbook, step by step. First, you figure out who you need to talk to and what you need to talk about. Then, of course, you actually do the outreach. But listen, it can't stop there. The really critical parts, the ones people sometimes forget, are maintaining those relationships over the long haul. And, this is huge, following through on every single promise you make.
Now, to make sure this whole process isn't just a box-ticking exercise, it needs to be built on some solid principles. So let's walk through the 4 pillars that make a program truly effective. First up, Principle A, maintain a dependable practice. What this means is your outreach can't be a random, one-off thing you do when you feel like it. It has to be a consistent, reliable, and ongoing part of how you do business.
So that means you've got to have trained people who know what they're doing. You need to communicate consistently, not just when there's a problem. And you have to use metrics to see if what you're doing is even working. It's about building a system that's always on, which is absolutely vital when a crisis actually hits.
Okay, next up, Principle B. This is the action phase. This is where the rubber meets the road, where you go from planning to actually getting out there and talking with your stakeholders.
This is all about being strategic. You have to figure out the best ways to reach people, create the right tools for the job, whether that's a website or a town hall meeting, and then tailor your message. Because remember, one size definitely does not fit all.
All right, on to Principle C, and this one is so important. Look, it's not enough to just talk at people. You have to listen, and you have to follow through. This is all about monitoring your system to make sure it's actually working. So here's the bottom line for this principle. If you say you're going to do something, you do it, period. You have to track those promises, make sure that community concerns actually get to management, and write everything down so the organization learns from every single interaction.
And that brings us to the final principle, being proactive. Don't just set up the program and let it coast. You should be using all that data and feedback you're gathering to actively show people what you're doing right and to constantly make your outreach even better.
And that leads us perfectly into our last section, measurement. You know the old saying, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So how do you actually know if all this effort is making a difference?
This really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? How do you get past just a vague feeling that things are going well and get to the hard facts about your engagement strategy?
Well, the answer is data. You track key performance indicators, or KPIs. And here's a really sharp insight. It's just as important to track who isn't engaging as who is. That's a huge red flag. That data can tell you if key people are tuning out, which gives you a chance to step in. Then you can slice and dice the data by the type of engagement, the reason, the whole flow to get a really clear picture.
So if you take away just one thing from all this, let it be this. Effective stakeholder outreach is a circle, a continuous loop. It's a dialogue, never a monologue. You have to listen, you have to measure what you hear, and then you have to use that to constantly get better.
And that leaves us with one final thought, a really simple but powerful question to ask yourself and your team. Is your facility considered a good neighbor? And after everything we've talked about today, what concrete things are you actually doing to make sure that answer is always, without a doubt, yes?